Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Weekly Reads, where we bring you 5 book recommendations all in one show. My name is Devon. I work at the Worcester Public Library, along with my co-host, Joy. Well, Joy, all of my books this week have a little bit of romance in them.
Oh, no. But I have to say that I've been a little heavy on memoir lately, so I'll forgive you.
It evens out.
Yeah,
So
we
most of
both
the
have
stuff
our
we're talking,
fixations.
right.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff we're talking about today, you can get online for free with the Overdrive or Libby app on your phone or device. You can also use Overdrive in your browser on your laptop or desktop, and we have physical pickup of items if you want the print book, book on CD, large print. I couldn't fit all the formats on the slides, so if you're looking for a particular one, just go to our catalog, and if you're not sure how to do any of that, just call the library. So now I'm going to switch screens so you can see what we have in store for you this week. All right, and as usual, I'll be focusing on the fiction, Joy will do the nonfiction, and we have our coming soon title. So for my first choice, I have Longborn by Jo Baker. This book came out in 2013, and at that time it was the best book of the year according to Kirkus and The Guardian. It was also on the New York Times list of 100 notable books. In this book, the servants take center stage in this imagined below-stairs version of Pride and Prejudice. While Elizabeth Bennet and her sisters fuss over balls and husbands, Sarah, their housemaid, is chafing against the boundaries of her class. But there is just as much romance and intrigue downstairs at Longborn as there is upstairs. When a new footman arrives under mysterious circumstances, the carefully organized world she has known threatens to be upended. Mentioned only fleetingly in Jane Austen's classic, here Jo Baker takes us beyond the drawing rooms of Regency England into the domain of the stern housekeeper and the starry-eyed kitchen maid, into the gritty particulars faced by the lower classes to give us more of the story that has captivated readers for generations. I really think this book would be great for fans of Downton Abbey, as well as the old BBC show Upstairs, Downstairs. So that's why I have the two images, that's Downton in the middle and Upstairs, Downstairs on the right. This book got starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and Booklist. But the one quote I like the best is from Entertainment Weekly. They said, "The finale is so back of the hand to the forehead romantic, someone should make it in needlepoint," which is just fantastic. So it sounds like this is a great book for fans of Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, Upstairs, Downstairs, Downton Abbey. It really has a lot going for it, some historical accuracy and just, spinning a story from the original tale. We have it in a lot of formats if you're interested. Here's one from Joy.
Well, my first choice for this week is When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through. Compiled by Poet Laureate of the United States, an enrolled member of the Muskogee Nation, Joy Harjo, and many other contributors. So let's talk about a book of 400 pages and then some long, featuring the work of 140 poets representing 100 Indian tribal groups covering a time span from 1678 to 2019, with a geographic range stretching from Maine to Hawaii. The volume includes chants, prayers, lyrical verse, experimental poetry, prose pieces, spoken word, and not least humor. Poet Louis Littlecorn Oliver published his first collection at the age of 80. Others were barely out of their teens. Many names are familiar. Louise Erdrich, M. Scott Momaday, Sherman Alexie, Natalie Diaz, and Harjo herself. Others are unjustifiably obscure. Many of the poems included reflect a deep connection to nature and to tribal identity, as might be expected. Others articulate rage over the legacy of dispossession and injustice experienced by Native Americans for over 400 years. Also to be expected. But listen to this one by Jake Skeets, a very young poet from the Diné Nation, from a poem. This is an excerpt from a poem called Drunk Town. A bar called Eddie's sits at the end of the world. By the tracks, drunk men get some sleep. My father's uncle tries to get some under a long bed truck. The truck backs up to go home. I arrange my father's boarding school soap bones on white space and call it a poem. Like my father, I come upon death, staggering into the house with beer on the breath. Mule deer splintered in barbed tendon, gray highway veins narrow, push, pull under teal and red hills. A man is drunk, staggering into northbound lanes, dollar bills for his index and ring fingers. Sands glitter with broken bottles, greens, deep blues, clears, and golds. This place is White Cone, Greasewood, Sanders, Whitewater, Bread Springs Crystal, Chinley, Nazlini, Indian Wells, and all muddy roads lead from Gallup. The sky places an arm on the near hills. On the shoulder, dark gray, almost blue, bleeds into greens, blue-greens, turquoise into hazy blue, pure blue, no gray or gold or oil black seeped through. No doubt, When the Light of the World Was Subdued is a work of great power and formidable scope. So what's not to love? Apparently nothing. When the book was first published in August of this year, it received a multitude of good reviews. Words like immersive, emotionally resonant, groundbreaking, definitive, essential, stunning, and revelatory were liberally employed. Oprah named it one of the 7 books that got her through 2020. Perhaps most astonishingly, when the book was first published in August, it sold out of its first print run and is now on its second. This in a world where we all know nobody reads poetry. But perhaps the popularity of this book is not so surprising after all. At the end of the year, 2020, the light of the world is indeed subdued for all of us. And we perhaps crave the comfort that an artfully chosen word or two can bring us. One review stated that this volume will no doubt remain on her bedside table for years. Now, I know that the purpose of Weekly Reads is to encourage readers like you to find books you love and borrow them from, ta-da, the library. In this case, however, you may want to own a copy. I intend to ask for one for Christmas.
Sounds like a good idea. I might ask for one for the holidays as well.
And the poem, by the way, "Oh, Give Me Back My Bended Bow," that is funny and good. So that's another good one you chose, Devon, for the
Yeah, I chose it because it fit on one, snippet, and I thought that was a nice one.
Yeah, there's so much variety in this volume.
Sounds really good. Okay, well, here's my next fiction choice. This is Prudence. This book came out in 2015, and it's another one I'm featuring in honor of Native American Heritage Month. The author is Native American. This book is described as a combination of a mystery, a literary romance, and a Greek tragedy. On a hot day in August of 1942, Frankie returns to his family in Minnesota for one last visit before he joins the war as a bombardier. Awaiting him are his hovering mother, his distant father, the Indian caretaker who's been more of a father to him than his real one, and Billy, the childhood friend who has become something more intimate. But before the homecoming is celebrated, the search for a German soldier escaped from the prisoner of war camp across the river explodes in a shocking act of violence, with consequences that will reverberate for years to come. Powerful and original, this is a story of desire, loss, and the search for connection, of race and class, and a supposedly more innocent era. It's also about the secrets we keep, the ones we tell, and who and how we're allowed to love. This book got a starred review from Booklist. The Washington Post said, "This World War II-era novel speaks to our current moment in US history with eloquence and complexity. Inequalities of race, class, gender, and sexual orientation, the treatment of captured combatants, the ethics of bombing civilians across the world, a culture that allows white people to shoot people of color without punishment. All this and more resonates through this book." So if you watched a few of our shows, you might know that I know nothing about history unless I read it in historical fiction. So when I was first reading about this book, I thought, what? Were there really prisoner of war camps in the US during World War II? And it turns out there were. In Minnesota alone, there were over 15 camps that housed around 400,000 prisoners of war. And this happened because there were so many men from the US fighting overseas. The prisoners of war were brought here to fill labor shortages in the rural areas. So this is a photo of one of the work camps in Minnesota, and it looks like they're doing something there in the yard. Anyway, I think this book sounds really appropriate for our current moment, and I'm just fascinated to, read this and learn more about some history that I didn't know of. Here's one from Joy.
And David Troyer is an acclaimed historian, so it's nice to see that he's also writing fiction. My next choice for this week is The Dragons, the Giant, the Women, a memoir by Wayutu Moore, which was just named one of the 10 best books of the year by Publishers Weekly. Now, I don't mean 10 best nonfiction books or 10 best memoirs. I mean 10 best books. So wow. I was very pleased to see that. When Wayutu Moore was about to turn 5, she told her father that she wanted a big party. "Well, give her one," her mom said. "Invite everybody." And they did. Wayutu's cousins were there, and her grandmother, Oma, and her sisters, and Papa, who sat in the backyard with the neighbors talking politics and laughing. She had a big fancy cake and wore a poofy, lacy dress that her grandfather, a tailor, made especially for her. But Ma'am wasn't there. She was at Columbia University on a Fulbright scholarship, and it would be a few months before she returned to their home in Monrovia, Liberia, for the summer. Sometimes Wayutu said that she wanted to go to New York too to be with Ma'am, and then Oma would convince her that, quote, Liberia's sweetness was incomparable, more than a ripe mango strings hanging between my teeth after sucking the juice out of every sticky bite. That was all I knew, said Wayutu, of my home then, that I lived in a place that made words sing so sweet. And so even without her mother, why would Wayutu ever leave? But leave she did. A few months after that epic party, with Liberia's civil war looming on the horizon, Wayutu and her family were forced to flee. It would be a very long time before she and her sisters saw Ma'am again, and longer still before she returned to her childhood home in Monrovia. The Dragons, the Giant, the Women is nonfiction, a memoir that reads like a fairy tale. Seen through the eyes of 5-year-old Wayutu, the dragons are Liberia's warring strongmen whose weapons belch fire and sound like drums. The lion is her father, Augustus Moore, a college professor who protects and sustains his children as they undertake a harrowing journey across a hellish landscape strewn with what little Wayutu sees as sleeping figures surrounded by pools of something red. It is due to her father's courage, persistence, and fundamental decency, aided perhaps by a bit of luck and a miracle or two, that the family does find their first place of refuge, a village deep in the bush. And then there are the women, Oh, the women. There is old Ma who accompanies the family into exile and provides the little girl with the nurture and structure they so desperately need. There is Ma'am, who, while she may be physically safe in New York, endures excruciating loneliness, uncertainty, and grief before she embarks on her own dangerous quest. Then there is Sata, teenage girl and rebel soldier, who teaches Waetu that the line between good and bad, friend and enemy, can be very thin indeed. Moore knows that many Westerners perceive Africa to be a place of poverty, disease, and unremitting warfare. But in lush lyrical prose, she shows us her Liberia, a land of vivid color, tantalizing smells, music, laughter, resilience, and unbreakable familial bonds. And she takes us on a journey that begins in fear and ends in reunion and hope. And that is the Traveler's Pass issued to the family as they moved between Liberia and Sierra Leone. If they hadn't had that, they probably would not have survived.
Well, it does sound like an amazing book. It's understandable why it made it on that top 10 list.
It really is.
Okay, well, it's time for a coming soon title, but before I change slides, don't forget to give us some likes and loves if you enjoy our videos, and make sure to share this with all your friends who also love books. Okay, Joey, this one is a straight up romance book, but it's also historical fiction.
If it's historical, that's fine.
So this book is coming out on Tuesday, November 24th. Donna Hill is an Essence best-selling author, and this book is being described as an emotional love story set against the backdrop of the civil rights movement. 1963 Harlem is the epicenter of Black culture, and the fight for equality has never been stronger. Yet even within its ranks, a different battle rages: love thy neighbor or rise up against your oppressors. Jason has just arrived in New York to help spread the message of his mentor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., of passive resistance, while beat poet Anita believes the teachings of Malcolm X, that the way to true freedom is by any means necessary. But when Jason sees Anita perform her poetry at the B-flat lounge, he's transfixed. And Anita has never met anyone who can match her wits like this. With one movement and two ideologies, will love be enough to unite them? This book is a celebration of hard-won victories from the past and a reminder of how much work still needs to be done. The characters visit historical locations like the Apollo Theater, and of course, historical figures make appearances as well, including a young John Lewis and 14-year-old Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
Yeah, Kirkus said this book is a captivating and skillful weaving of history and romantic drama. I just love the sound of this book. All the musicians that they run into and the historical figures. And of course, I like the romance aspect as well. There is a print copy in the catalog if you'd like to place a hold on it, and hopefully it will soon be in overdrive in Libby. But that brings us to the end of our episode for this week. Don't forget, if you're looking for a book recommendation, just say something in the comments and Joy and I will dazzle you with many book recommendations.
We certainly will.
Yes, we will. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We hope to see you next time.
See you later, fellow readers.